My name is Arzu Sardarli, and my presentation title is Impact of Education on Family Income and Employment in First Nations Communities, North, Central, and East Saskatchewan. Before to start, I would like to make clear a few things. As you could see, my university background is mathematical physics, but since I joined First Nations University, I've really changed my, I didn't change, but I added some other things to my research interests as well. The reason of that is maybe I will make kind of like racist joke. I grew up in former Soviet Union, and my native country, it used to be part of Soviet Union, but now it's independent. But I'm not Russian, and I experienced many problems that the First Nations have in Canada. And that was one of the reasons why I came to First Nations University. We had similar problems, language problems, problems with education, and many other things. My racist joke, actually this was reality. In Russia, my nations are called black nations. They're not white. And this is not officially, but all the time I was hearing this black nations or whatever. And first, when I started working in First Nations University, the first day when I was in the building, I heard the two students were talking. One asked, they didn't know me, that was my first day. And one asked another, do you know Arzu, is that First Nation? And another answered, no, he's a white. I said, thanks God, all my life I was black, now finally I became white man. But again, as I told you, I've had all those experience, bad or good experience. And after I joined the First Nations University, I communicated with First Nations elders. In my community, in my native country, we also have that institution of elders. My great-grandmother, she was elder. And so lots of similarities even in our culture and etc. And I supervised the mathematics contest for First Nation schools, and I visited First Nations communities. I had very good meetings with elders, with chiefs, and one of them just kind of like, not one of them, many times I had this type of talks that, the First Nation people, they work, they make money, they earn the money, but usually the average Canadian thinks that the First Nation people, they don't make any money, and the rest of the society just pay them money for nothing. Would you be able to estimate how much money we make, how much, what's our contribution to the economy of Canada? And those, again, I'm not social scientist, but I decided to do that. As a person, I had kind of like personal interest, again, because I had the same problem in my own country, my previous country, in Soviet Union. So that's why I started this, I did this research. Again, I'm not social scientist, and this is the social problems and under view of a mathematician. So that's not the pure social study. Again, it's my understanding of mathematician. So this research project, it was supported by SHURC and within the Aid for Small University program. Before to start, I would like to appreciate the huge contribution of personalities, Paul Irving from Lac La Range Indian Band, Josephine Key from Kakufta First Nations community, and Warren Arkan, Muskeg Lake First Nations. The two, Paul and Warren, they were my students, and Josephine Key, she was a counselor in Kekusa First Communities. The very, very helpful people, and Josephine Key, she was a counselor for education department in their band office, and then she became, she was supervising the health department. Very helpful people. Again, without their help, I wouldn't be able to do this research. It's very trend of world economy that in our days the very rapid progress of technologies causes real, sometimes very dramatic change of the national and international labor markets. And the globalized marketplaces demands highly educated professionals. The competitiveness of the individuals in the labor market is their employment status and income become more and more dependent on their educational level of education. And the competition is no longer for low-skilled or poorly paid jobs. People have a competition for high level salary where the high level of education is required. And the minimum qualification now required is a high school diploma. I mean, even high school diploma is not enough for many very low paid jobs. The post-secondary education, it becomes priority in many Canadian families and in First Nations families as well. The increase of the impact of education on the labor market is now it's one of the object of interest of many studies in the entire world, and especially in countries with developed economies. Analysis of Canadian census showed the relationship between educational attainment and the employment income in the labor market. The data shows some the similar trends for most of the developed countries or OECD countries. That's basically developed countries, and some countries allies of these developed countries, or G20. Now they have a different kind of like nominations. Here you see, this is from Stat Canada. You see how income and education, how income depends on education, how income level and education level changed in Canada. This information is based on the data from 1981, 1991, and 2001. You see here the percentage of people with no diploma. As you see from, let's say, 1981 to 1991, the percentage of people with with no diploma changed from 48 to 38, 10%. It's decreasing. It means that more and more people are getting high school diploma. And you can see the increase of percentage of people getting college diploma, university diploma. College diploma usually, it's at the level of pre-bachelor degrees. There's some certification programs and etc. But you can see the increase of percentage of people having university and college degrees. And this graph again is from Stat Canada, has been taken from Stat Canada. You can see very interesting pattern, very interesting trend. This dashed area, that is the amount of people with university degrees. In total, what is interesting? people having no certificate, diploma, or degree, and people with university degree, they make about the same money in total. But if you go to top 5 or top 1 or top 10, that's a higher salary. See, the percentage of people with university degree is much higher than percentage of people with no diploma or high school diploma. Again, it means that if you want to make more money, you have to get the university degree. And higher is the salary range. Again, top 10 or top 5, top 1, you see the percentage of people with university degrees significantly increasing. That is, again, the information from Stat Canada. But there is some kind of like paradox, and it's observed in Canadian labor market. Apparently, for some specific areas, university people having university degree, they do not make that much money. That's sometimes they make even less money than people with high school diploma. Again, it depends what type of program you've completed. Apparently, there are some programs, some professions which are not demanded by labor market, and it's in literature it's called the Canadian paradox. So it means that the relationship between income level and educational attainment is not that much obvious. It's not like, yeah, like if you have higher degree, you will get more money. It's not that much clear in general for all Canadians. But it's even much worse relating to First Nations communities, because there are the Stat Canada has lots of data, very useful data regarding the Canadians, the average Canadian for all the provinces, different cities, and etc. But very few data, just a couple of studies regarding the labor market in First Nations communities, or income level of First Nations, or employment rate of First Nations people. Recently, I made a presentation in one of the conferences organized by Stat Canada. Well, again, I have to be kind of humble, but I was the only one who presented the data collected in the communities. This different research projects, they relate to general idea, kind of a general data collected from Stat Canada. There is almost no specific data collected in the First Nations community. So that was one of the motivations. One is, I mentioned at the beginning, kind of like personal motivation. But another scientific motivation is that there is no enough data for statistical analysis of labor market or employment rate or income rate in First Nations communities. So we tried to do that research. There is, again, one general trend for all Canadian labor market. You can see, again, this from Stat Canada. Here you see the percentage of the employment rate. For First Nations people on reserve, it's about 50%. It's alarming data. It means that employment rate for people working in reserve is 50%. It means that only 50% of First Nations people have a job in their reserve. 50%, can you imagine? Off reserve, it's a little bit better. It's about 60–70%. For Métis, it's a little bit better. Inuit, it's again about 60%. For a non-Aboriginal people, employment rate is 80%. You can see the difference, 50% and 80%. That's a huge difference, 30% difference. It means that, again, the First Nation people are disadvantaged by 30%. It's again, alarming numbers. So we decided to do the research in the communities. One of the reasons why the Stat Canada doesn't have too much data about First Nations communities, because very often it happens they cannot organize the surveys in the communities. They kind of like come from outside, they want to do something. There is no community's involvement, and that's why they don't get the response. Response rate for the Stat Canada in the First Nations community is very low. Again, the reason is that they don't even explain what they want to do in this community. They come and they hand it out, the questionnaires or whatever, and then no response. Although we've decided to use another approach. First of all, again, the people that I met in these three communities, some of them, they were our students. With some of them I had a collaboration in my previous project. So we decided to do this survey in Lac La Range. There is a Fairchild community in Musket Lake and Kakishtaha. As you see, there are one community is on the north, another is in central Saskatchewan, another is the southeast. And Kakishtaha is, it has about 150 households in the community. Musket Lake is about 50. Fairchild is about 20. So we, in purpose, we chose different size of communities and in different areas that we could get representation of all Saskatchewan First Nations. The more non-biased sample, the very different areas. And because these communities are situated on different sides of Saskatchewan, they have a different economical situation, they have a different infrastructure. For example, in Kakishtaha, they have a health center, they have very good school, they have stores, gas stations, and etc. In Musket Lake, they don't have that much. That's the infrastructure, and etc. So again, in average, all these three communities would represent the entire Saskatchewan. The questionnaires, before we started, we discussed the questionnaires with community members, with chiefs, and with band council, with elders. So which questions would be would give the better representation of the labor market situation in the communities, and then we chose 10 questions. Our surveyors, the people were chosen from the communities. Again, it gives kind of like more trust. You know, the one thing that someone is coming to your house and ask you how much money you made last year. No one would answer you. But if that is the person from your own community and that person explained that this is the private information and no one would have that, would read that information and etc. What we did, we've prepared the questionnaires and consent letters. The surveyors, they read the purpose, information about the project and etc. And we gave them envelopes. After they answered questions, they would put that questionnaire in the envelope and drop in the band office without name, without house number and everything. And people understand that this is, no one would know that. Even I don't know. Yeah, I know that someone made $50,000, but I don't know who exactly. So that's why if you explain this to the community members, they get very high response. We had a very high response rate. You can see that from 20% to 38% response. It's very good rate. So people were interested and they answered the question. Again, the reason, because we had kind of like trust. And they knew that no one would use that data against them and etc. and that was totally anonymous. No one would know whose data it is. As I mentioned, the questionnaires included 10 questions. In particular, we had the question, how many of the family members have high school or post-secondary diploma, and they had to choose the highest degree. For example, if you have a university degree, then you don't count the high school, just the university degree. Then one was the question, what was the family income in 2010? And another question was number of family members working in reserve, on reserve and off reserve. So, and some other questions too, but it doesn't, those questions don't relate to this presentation. That's why I don't show them. What we used, here I used a little bit my mathematical part. Usually in many research, people just count, the researchers count in the family how many diplomas they have. High school diploma, how many in general. Doesn't matter, high school diploma, university diploma, just number of diplomas. We think this is not very a good approach, because people having high school diploma, they will make less money than the people having university diploma. The weight of those diplomas are not the same. But in many research, they ignore that. They just use number of diplomas. Doesn't matter what diploma you have. Usually in the family, they may have either no diploma, one diploma, or two diplomas. Two diplomas is most of they mean the parents. The two parents, they both have the diploma. We changed this approach a little bit. We try to digitize that information. We scored, if you have no diploma, 0 score, high school diploma 1, post-secondary school diploma is 2. So then you can differentiate, distinguish the high school diploma and post-secondary diploma. And we evaluated the education attainment of the family. So 0 times number of family members with no diploma, plus 1 times number of family members with high school diploma, plus 2 times number of family members with post-secondary diploma. So in our understanding, it gives better idea regarding the educational attainment of the family. So here you see the correlation between employment and income versus the education level or education attainment of the families. You can see that it differs, that correlation differs from community to community. What means the correlation? It means that how the income or employment rate depends on the educational level. For example, in Lac La Range, you see the very high correlation for employment. So if you have higher education, for sure you have the higher employment. The reason, again, just our explanation that one of the reasons, because the Lac La Range, this community is very close. I mean, almost in Lac La Range city. And in the city, they have many stores and schools and etc. It's easier to find a job. And that's why the correlation is very high. Higher, if you have the high diploma, university diploma or high school diploma, it's you will get a job for sure. And another reason is that Lac La Range is on the north. The non-Aboriginal people, they don't like to go to the north that much. So that's why that community doesn't have too high competition between Aboriginals and non-Aboriginals. But you see here the correlation between income and education. It's not that much high. The reason is that, yeah, you can find the job, but not the fact that you will make too much money, because in Lac La Range, many of the jobs are low salary, low rate jobs. Not too much. You cannot make too much money. You can find the job, but you cannot make too much money. In Kakuştaha again, you see this correlation is lower. In muscularly is the lowest one. Again, it's probably because in the reserve they don't have too many, just a couple of stores and schools, so not too much. And this is an overall averaged correlation for Saskatchewan for income versus education and employment versus education. Just note that this correlation coefficient for non-Aboriginal people is much higher. Again, it's, we didn't do that research, but it's much higher. Maybe this graph will not tell you too much, but here we have the percentage of families with indicated the income rank. Is we've divided the income rate into subclasses as families making less than 10,000, between 10,000 and 20,000, from 20,000 to 30,000, and etc. In the questionnaire, we had the one of the question was how much money you made in 2010, and people had to choose one of these intervals, not the exact number, but one of these intervals. I decided to simplify this graph a little bit. I will not show all these classes. This one is just, I've deleted some of these and to make it a little bit simple for visualizing. See, this is this curve. That is for families making less than 10,000. And here this is a percentage, this percentage 40, with a 0 score of education attainment. This number shows that 40% of families making less than $10,000, they have 0 educational attainment. So they have no diploma. 40% of the families, majority. For example, 30% of families making money between 20 and 30,000. Again, they have no diploma. But if you go to this side, see this curve. People having the educational score of 3, it's kind of like 2 high school diploma, 1 university diploma and 2 high school diplomas, something like that. Or 1 university diploma, 1 high school diploma. That they make much more money. They make more than $70,000. So percentage of people, families making more than 70,000 is much more than here. So again, this shows that higher is educational level. This 3 is the highest level. Higher is income. This brown and lines, they are higher income. Higher is educational level, higher is income. A lower is educational level, a lower is income. These two blue and violet, they are low income families. This one gives better information. Here you see the percentage of families with indicated annual income. We've tried to check, to choose, to make 2 groups, families making less than 50,000 and families making more than 50,000. Why we choose the 50,000? Because in 2010, the average family income in Saskatchewan was $50,000, 52,000 something. So these graphs say that, for example, 90% of people, 90% of families making less than 50,000, they have no diploma, so 0, 90%. Only 10% of people having making more than 50,000, they had no diploma. So again, 90%, if you have no diploma, 90% of chance that you will be below the provincial average. 90% chance that you will make less than 50,000 for the family. But if you look at this one, these numbers, and by the way, see, there is no difference if you have no diploma or just one high school diploma. The pattern is approximately the same. But if you have your attainment, education attainment of your family is 2. So two relate to 2 high school diploma. Then the chance of being below the average is 70%. And chance of being above the average, above the 50,000, is 30%. But if you have the education attainment of 3, which means 1 school diploma and 1 university diploma, then you have about 60% of chances that you will be above the average income. And but still 40% of chance that you will be below. Again, this is the families, more typical families making higher income. It was 1 high school diploma, 1 university diploma. We had only a few families with 2 university diplomas, but that was outlier, and that's why we did not consider it, because that was less than 1% of communities. So even if you have 1 high school diploma and 1 university diploma, your chances of making more money is significantly higher. Look at here, it's a 60% and here's 10%. And if you have no diploma, you have only 10% of chances for making higher income. This is what I told you. In some research, they do not differentiate university diploma or high school diploma. They just count the number of diplomas. And it gives very good agreement. If you have no diploma, still you have 90% of being below the average. And with 1 diploma, your chances is about 30% for achieving the average. And with 2 diplomas, again, for this one, we had a difference. See, this one and this one. Again, the reason why these 2 bars looks different, because we've differentiated, we considered that difference between the university diploma and high school diploma. Basically, in this graph, this 3rd one, that is combination of these 2. That's why it's a little bit different. So what we think our approach is better, because again, we consider the difference between high school diploma and university diploma. Here you see one more graph. It's also represents the situation with income. Basically, it's very close to the first graph I showed you, but this is more representative. Here is you see the annual income of the families with no diploma. You see 40% of families with no diploma make less than 10,000. So that shows that is better than the first graph is more for mathematicians, but this is more representative. And only 10% of people with no diploma make more than 70,000. But if you change, for example, with 1 diploma, see 7% of people having 1 diploma makes less than 10,000. Again, the higher is your education, more money you will make. And here, see, people with 2 diploma, the 14% of those people makes more than 70,000. Another data that we've collected, we tried to find out the percentage of employment rate for different educational levels. You see people with no diploma, these are the percentages. 5%, only 5% of people with no diploma, they have off-reserve job. And only 3% of people with no diploma, they have on-reserve job. So altogether, 8% of people with no diploma, they have a regular job. I mean, there are some jobs, let's say hunting, fishing, we do not count that. We count the regular job, not seasonal jobs and etc. With one diploma, yeah, your chances for being employed is increasing. 11% of people with one diploma, they have off-reserve job, and 9% on-reserve job. And of course, if you have, in your family, you have 2 diplomas, then 52% you have chances of getting job off-reserve, and 20% having chances of getting job on reserve. Is much, much higher. Kind of like conclusion again, from this research, to be honest, I got more questions than the answers. And one of the questions, again, there is a huge difference between First Nations communities, First Nation people, and non-First Nation people, non-Aboriginal. You could see that the difference in income, and also from our research, you could see the correlation. Even if you have high education, not the fact that you will get a high income job. One of the reasons, again, from our personal communication and etc., is that very often for the same job, non-Aboriginal people are paid more than Aboriginal people. It happens. And again, from our, it's not that we did not make that research, specific research, but that was one of the explanations. Then if 2 people work in the bank, one is First Nation person, another is not. The non-First Nation person are paid higher. That's one of the explanations why we have low correlation, lower correlation. But you could see again the families having at least one high school and one university diploma, they have much higher chances for being above the provincial average. It has been observed that the employment rate significantly depends on the educational attainment. And again, in example of Lac La Ranche, you could see that sometimes you may have higher employment rate, but the income rate is not that much high. It has been observed that higher is the educational level, higher is a percentage of employees working off reserves. From one side, it's kind of like good that, yeah, if you have higher education, you have more chances for working off reserves. But sometimes it happens that because just simply in the reserves, people don't have high salary jobs. The infrastructures in the communities, they are developed. And that's why people have to go, not just because they are too happy to live outside of the community. They don't have the job inside, in reserve. And that's why most highly educated people, they look for a job outside of the communities. And the higher percentage of off-reserve employees among the community members with higher educational level, again, might be caused by the deficit of on-reserve jobs requiring higher employee qualification. Mostly they work in schools. That's with a higher level of education. They find the job in schools. And if in some communities they don't have the school in the community, and they have to go to another community. So no, there is no any other high salary jobs in the community, in most of the communities. Of course, again, in Kakdushta, yeah, they had good jobs in the community. Based on the result of our studies, one can state that the education has to be considered as one of the key factors for improving the earning potential and employment rate in First Nations communities. And I really appreciate people in my university, because we do that. I think we do this excellent job. And also in university, like in University of Regina, even the fact that this event, this conference is organized, it's kind of one of the motivations for getting higher. At least we can see what we have to do in First Nations community for getting better social life and better jobs, and etc. So, but education is number one. Again, I'm very happy that in my everyday job, I see more and more First Nation people coming to the university. I had a student, my student from Three Peaks community. He was 63 years old, man. He was a headman in the community, and Lambert Stonechild. He was driving every day, 100 kilometers, and he never was late. It's also a fact. He was never late. I asked him, what's your motivation? Why you want to get the university degree? And I didn't say that it's because you are 63 years old. But he said, you know, I want to get the different life. He didn't talk too much about the money, but he said, I want to get different life. And my understanding is that only with the education I can achieve that. And our research showed that he was right. The goals, our future goals, as I told you, this research actually gave me more answers than, more questions than answers. And for answering those questions, we think it seems reasonable to extend the survey to other First Nations communities. And of course, we think there is a need for larger studies, specifically regarding this correlation between employment rate, income rate, and educational level. Again, as I told you, unfortunately, agencies like Stat Canada and etc., they cannot achieve good results in First Nations communities. And reason, because they cannot, I will criticize, I don't know, they are kind of like, maybe I shouldn't, but I will criticize, because they don't know how to work with First Nations people. That's simply. People in First Nations communities, they don't trust what they are doing. They don't explain what they are doing. First, when I started in one of the First Nations communities, he said, you know that someone came last year and they asked how many people need the houses. So what? We all need the houses. How they would help us. You have to explain how you can help, or you cannot help. If you cannot help, why you cannot help. They don't do that, unfortunately. And sometimes they get the response rate 1%, 2%. In the same communities, we got 38% of response. The only reason, because we had a trust. So I'm getting too emotional. I better don't talk too much about that. So then in future studies, we plan to differentiate the post-secondary class with respect to the academic level and trade areas. The first university diploma is also different. Again, in future, if we have a chance to continue this research, it's good to know in which area, what type of diploma they have, in which area, arts diploma, in science, or engineering, or whatever. Or if that is a certificate, which type of in education. It would help us, to give better idea to First Nation students. So which, if you want to get the job right away, right after the university, which area you have to choose. Maybe you have to go to nursing, maybe you have to go to the education. Because it changed from time to time. One decade you need more nurses, next decade you need more teachers. And students should know that, should get that information. And of course, it would be reasonable to organize the similar survey in the communities with Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal population. So we could compare that. It would be very good. I mean, if you take just isolated First Nation community, yeah, you get the information about this community. But if you have the community like Prince Albert, when 40% of population is First Nation people, and then we could see the real difference between incomes, if people having the same educational level, making different money, different level of money, we could see that. For now, we have just suggestion. Let's see, my suggestion, just my personal suggestion, why the income level is lower or employment level is lower. But again, this is not the scientific fact. That's why I cannot, based on that. But again, my personal experience when I talk to First Nation people, sometimes they say, even when they hire people, if they have in the short list one Aboriginal, another non-Aboriginal, then non-Aboriginal will have higher chances. Oh, it's also, if you do this type of research in like cities like Prince Albert, you could see that difference. So that's our goals, and here you see some references. We used a little bit more, but these are more related references. Again, I would like to thank all of you for listening, and it's very important to express the results of your the research. But again, to consider that I'm not social scientist. I'm a mathematician, so that is understanding of mathematicians in social problems. Maybe it's not that perfect, but that's again my own understanding. Thank you very much again. If you have any questions, I would give that.